All right, this is Joey, the pastor.
And this is Priscilla, Joey's wife.
Can you say that louder?
This is Priscilla, Joey's wife.
Peanut butter and jelly eating fool, you going to say something?
I didn't know if I was allowed to speak. This is Craig, Joey's wife's friend and Joey's friend. And also known as a porn pastor, if that counts.
There you go.
And a Packer fan.
Yes.
Go, Pat, go.
And this is the pastor with no answers. And this is kind of cool because we actually just hung out with Craig 3 days ago. So that's neat. We watched a Packer game together, joined by his son Nolan. And depending on when this episode goes out, some of you Packer fans, you'll be interested. It was the Jacksonville game, very first game of the season. And Craig, Priscilla, my friends, I think Priscilla, do you think Jacksonville is just a better team this year? What did you think about their offensive line? What did you think about the line?
I just wasn't evaluating them that much. I was just taking it all in. I was having so much fun watching the Packers.
Yeah, what
being
was
there live, meeting like players' moms.
What was like the strength of the coaching staff on Jaguars?
I just don't know. I don't know any of that.
Did you see any D in fences?
I did see that. I was excited about that.
Craig, listen to this. This literally was probably 6 years ago. So think about it. This is 2010. Priscilla and I have been married for 8 years. We're sitting there watching a football game, and I promise you, I totally thought she was kidding. She just stops and looks at me, and she's like, "Did you see that?" And I was like, "What?" She said, "There were some fans in the stands, and they had a D and a fence. Defense." And so I was just like, wow, Priscilla is being really funny. And I looked at her. She was serious. I was like, that is the oldest type of sign ever.
I thought it was super witty. It was cute.
Just the fact, though, that your wife went to a game.
Yeah.
And when you said, no, my wife likes football, we're coming down. And then I got scared for a moment because, and I don't know, I don't want to. Maybe she has it in her closet, but Priscilla, I was glad you didn't show up in a jersey because I have this thing with women in football jerseys. Like, that's too much for me. That's like a Packer fan. Like, no, you had the Packer colors, but you didn't totally go, that the whole Packer jersey. So
I'm glad
it was
that
nice.
I didn't scare you.
So you know what defense is, and you were at a game, but. Guys, I have a confession to make. It's not really towards Priscilla, but to you, Joey. Can I just confess it on the podcast?
Yes, you can.
So you guys were walking around, and you're in front of our seats.
Yeah.
Before I told you there's seats by us, so you don't have to stand.
Right.
So you're eating a burrito.
Yeah.
And then I get you guys all confused when I listen to you, but I was pretty sure like the guys make fun of you for when I've heard you eat on your podcast, but I didn't know for a second. So I just texted Jeanette. This sounds mean, but I was like, hey, who's the fat one that they make fun of? And she said, Joey. But I was like, I was just at breakfast with Joey. And I don't know if that was, and I don't want to kill Toby, but I think Toby's bigger than you. So I was like, this doesn't make sense. But just in case, it was too good. So Nolan's like, what are you taking a picture of? I was like, I'm taking a picture of Joey eating a burrito. And then I texted it to Matt and Toby because, I just said, here's Joey eating a burrito. So if you happen to see that photo, there's nothing wrong with you eating a burrito.
I do not mind. I do not really mind at all. And
I didn't know. I didn't just, I've heard them make fun of you. So yeah.
The classic thing about that burrito, too, is it was falling apart, but I needed nourishment so bad, I was just digging into that thing, boy. I mean, I wasn't even picking it up at one point. I was just like a dog at my bowl, just trying to get as much of that burrito as I could. Here's the thing.
It was hard with the defense sign you were holding, too, to eat the burrito and the defense sign.
Totally. Here's what's crazy about the fat jokes. There are seriously people that they think that bothers me, and some of their joking has bothered me in the past, but that does not, and it's for that exact reason that you just gave, is I'm not fat, and the irony is that, Toby's gone through some seasons where he's a little overweight, and myself as well, But typically in our friendship, he's always been the bigger one. And so the three
Yeah.
of us, that's why it's so hilarious to us, because when he started those fat jokes on Bad Christian, it just came from nowhere. Because at the time, I was not fat. I was not overweight. Toby was bigger than me, and he just started calling me fat. We were like, okay, let's just roll with it. I have been to Bad Christian live podcasts, and people have actually been like, oh, man, Joey couldn't make it. And I was like, I'm Joey. And they're just like, no way. We're looking for this really grossly overweight guy. And they're totally serious.
Well, that's why I was confused. And then Jeanette knew it. Jeanette knows her Bad Christian trivia. And she's like, but I was like, this doesn't make sense. Just in case, I got to get a photo because I thought they would think that's funny. But it's really not that funny, you eating a burrito in front of me. But
well,
anyways.
here's why we have Craig Gross on for all of you listeners. I'm addressing you right now, listeners. Priscilla and I have, honestly, I mean, I'm speaking in real time here. This is not staged. This is not set up. But we have basically been thinking recently. We have got to figure out the technology situation with our kids. We have two daughters, 1 10, 1 8, two boys, 6 and 4. But our daughters, all of them have devices. Some of them are hand-me-downs. Some of them are Kindle Fires, and all they do is play games, especially our two boys. But our girls, they know about YouTube, so we know the kind of trash that's on YouTube. They watch a lot of gymnastics on it. My daughter watched how to make slime videos. But they're definitely at a stage now to where just like, okay, we got to figure something out, because obviously they can stumble on something that we wouldn't want them to stumble on. They can let curiosity get the best of them. So let me ask. I'll tell you this, Craig. I will make an effort to go into the girls' room when I know that they're in there on their devices, and I'll just pop in there. I don't knock for this very reason, because I want to go right in there and see what they're on. And every single time, without fail, I think they are at a stage of innocence. I mean, every time it's gymnastics, how to make slime.
Musically.
Musically, dance videos, or so. I really think at this point, we're good to go. But you would you be a little skeptical of that? Do you think that they have run into something that they shouldn't have? Naked body, sex scene, something like that?
I don't know what they've run into, but I mean, I wouldn't personally. I was going to say I wouldn't tell you how to parent, but I guess I'm going to tell you how to parent. No, but our rule is like you can't be on your devices in your room, just for that very nature of like I wasn't allowed to have a TV in my room, and then I got a job, and I bought one, and my mom's like, but we still have that rule. But I'm like, no, I'll pay for it. And then they were dumb enough to let me get cable in my room, so they never saw me. But I feel like at 9 years old or 10, or, I've got an 11-year-old and 13, and it's a lot easier to start those while you're younger than when you're 16 and you're like, oh, no, I got to charge it. It's like, well, we got chargers out here.
Right.
This is still the rule in our house.
Right.
And so I do think, because then when they get older, it's like you come in their room and, the lid shuts on the laptop or the device go off, and you're just, it's kind of like, even for an adult, like, we tell guys all the time, married men, like, dude, put the computer in a public place. But now that everyone's connected on devices, it's still, once again, like, I do think if you're connected to the internet on a device with no sort of filters or settings installed, like just devices out of the package, like, you're in trouble. Whether your kid whether you have an honor roll sticker on the back of your minivan or your kid's in Awana, and like, I don't care, like, homeschooled Amish, like, because even the Amish walk around with their cell phones. So you're in trouble because you're going to stumble across something. And I mean, we got an email from a wife of a guy that I know, and he's got a 9-year-old daughter, and he put her to sleep with the iPad. Like, oh, I just, she can watch something before you go to bed. Then she goes to sleep. But, a kid from her school had given her a URL, and she typed it in, and it was full-blown porn.
Yeah.
And so I think whether you stumble across it, whether you've been given a link or this or that, like, if these kids have access to this stuff, like, whether they want to see it or not, they're in danger of seeing way too much, way too soon. And it's hard to correct that once they've seen something or once they, it's hard to take that back. And so, yeah, I'm shocked. Like on every device that's out there today, you'd be surprised. Like even on the iPhone, Apple doesn't. You don't see a commercial about this. You don't see anything really about it. But there's some really good parental control setups built into the iPhone or the iPod that 95% of parents don't know about. And if you take the time to set that up, it's so much. Like, yeah, there's still some dangerous stuff out there, but man, you just got to be a parent, and before you give your kids this stuff, just dig in on this stuff.
Yeah. So, Priscilla, when you think about our kids in the living room on their devices, I mean, Craig, wouldn't you say that the chances of them stumbling upon something that they shouldn't, they could still do it right there in the living room unless we're sitting right next to them looking at everything that they're getting into?
Yeah, they could stumble across it. So let's take this. There's a friend of mine, and we recorded this video and put it on iParent. Netflix, like everyone's on Netflix. There's parental setting. There's a child account on Netflix, or there's an adult. And you and I both know it's like on Netflix, dude. There's a lot of trash if you just are allowed to see everything. But if you switch that over to the kid portal, it's super safe. Like you're not worried at all. But if you switch over to the, your account or your profile, you can just go through and look at, swimsuits or boob shots or just, whatever, just those images, I think for a kid, like bikini, you can type in, so I think the same thing with the internet, like YouTube is great, but it's super dangerous. But there's settings that you can set up. If your kid's going to go on YouTube, man, there's some easy settings right there on YouTube to go, hey, I don't want this stuff seen. For us personally, like YouTube at our house is blocked. And my son has a YouTube channel, and he uploads a video every Thursday morning, and yet it's blocked. And so, it's stuff like that where it's like tonight before soccer, he needed to upload his episode. So I put in the password, let him upload the episode, but I don't want him browsing YouTube videos. Just because, dude, there's just too much trash out there. And, it's kind of good. Like I said, not going the extra mile, but it's just realizing that, I have DirecTV, and I can, once again, on DirecTV, block out every mature rated program. An R-rated needs a password. And then, I don't know your cable, if you guys have cable or not, but you've got even all the porn stuff. You see the titles, like, banging slut 19 or whatever, like right there on your next to like,
I mean,
whatever it is. Like you see those. I don't want my kids even reading that.
Yeah,
and
totally.
So when I put the settings on DirecTV to block those, it just says, restricted. And so there's not even that thought of like some nasty title that's going to get their mind kind of going, or what is that? And I think the lame thing for me is like the amount of parents that don't want to do any work.
Right.
And I don't think it's just my kids. I think it's just kids in nature. Like iOS 10 just came out, and Nolan is giving my wife a tutorial tonight about it. She's all bothered and, how do you do this? And Nolan's already figured out all those dumb things about the flying in text messages and this and that. And I'm like, Nolan, like how in a day have you figured out all this stuff? And, I actually just went to Nolan, and I think I'm a pretty smart technical person, but I'm realizing kids are even smarter. And, I'm not the dumb dad, but no, I'm like, Nolan, dude, this thing's annoying. When I swipe to the left, why am I getting all the, Dad, you just need to do this. And I think your kids are going to be more advanced than you are. So
totally. I mean, they're growing up. They are growing up with not even seeing technology as a big deal. Like they're not like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we can watch about any video on anything that's ever happened in history since they've had TV, or we can pretty much research any answer and see a tutorial on YouTube. I mean, they don't even see how unbelievable that is. Priscilla, would you, because I know that kind of something that you struggle with in this conversation is also, and me too, but I'm curious what you think about totally avoiding YouTube, because I think that you also have, both of us talk about also, it's like, okay, we want to protect our kids, and at the same time, we want them to understand technology and culture. And I mean, would you even consider just making YouTube something that our kids can't look at?
Yeah, I actually am sitting here listening to you, Craig, and I'm like, man, we're kind of those dumb parents that have been a little lazy. I don't think we've meant to be lazy, but I definitely feel like we've been not ahead of the game. I think that our kids are growing faster than we want them to grow. So I think that our oldest is really this year really getting into wanting to be on the internet more. So maybe we've kind of lucked out with our kids not being that interested in going on different websites and having different apps until this year. She's a 5th grader, and all of her friends are on Musical.ly, and that's kind of her thing, and she loves to do YouTube and stuff. So when you say not in your rooms, I'm like, I think that's a really great policy. When you say no YouTube, I'm like, haven't thought about that, but I think that's probably great, because honestly, I feel like with 4 kids and all that we have going on, I just cannot police and make sure I always know what they're doing. So I think if we just have some general rules and things are done kind of out in the open, I think that would just make me feel better and not make me feel like I need to keep trying to check in and see what they're doing. So yeah. I would be open to that more, just for this is going to sound lazy again, for the ease of me. Like, otherwise I can't keep up with all of that. Because right now I do feel a little bit, I think right now my worry, I'm not so worried about, especially our oldest, I'm not worried about her seeing inappropriate things. I'm more worried about her getting on this Musical.ly thing. I don't know if your kids do that.
Yeah.
Like the whole getting a certain amount of likes. She's starting to talk about that. And I hate that. Like, that's the thing that's bothering me right now, is the whole likes thing.
So I hate it. I hate it with let's just go back to YouTube real quick. So YouTube for kids, like that app, and that, like, it's great. So if your kids are at such an age where it's like, there's a lot of great stuff on YouTube for kids, and so it's a whole different app. It's a whole different deal that I think is totally appropriate. It's like going on Netflix. Like, man, you can browse any of the kid, kind of family stuff, but And I think, to me, like, when your kids are younger and they just want a device, or they just want access, and then, I mean, Nolan, it's been 1 year since he's had an iPhone, and he just got out of the car. So, I mean, he knows this, but he had an iPod forever. His iPod does more than his iPhone. And I think he now knows that, but he wanted an iPhone forever. And I was trying to push that, like, as long as I could. And then I made some rules. Like, if you have an iPhone, like, here's the rules. First of all, I set up his iPhone, and his friends, I don't want to say they're dumb, because they're nice kids, but like, they always tell Nolan, like, oh no, go here. And Nolan's like, my phone doesn't do that. That's a cooler way to say, like, my dad, like, hacked my phone, so, like, it doesn't do shit. Like, but so he wanted it so bad where he took it however I gave it to him. Now, if I gave it to him and then a year later I had to go take some things off of it, that would be a harder fight.
Yeah.
But I was like, Nolan, here's the deal. Like, you're going to get an iPhone, and here's the rules. You break these rules, like, you don't have an iPhone. And so, like, I hate kids on games all day long, and kids that don't, now know how to talk to you face to face, and they just play games. And,
yeah, totally.
So on your iPhone, I was like, you can only have 5 games. Like, you can't have 52. Look at my phone. I don't use it to play games. It's like, I work on this thing and I communicate. As far as Safari, I disabled Safari, so he can't surf the web on his phone, because
how do you do that on iPhone, by the way?
It's so easy. You go to settings, and you go to restrictions, and then you enable restrictions with the 4-digit passcode, and then you turn off installing apps. I'll tell you what I did with Nolan. You can't install apps. You can't delete apps because I'm not going to have you you can't actually delete anything on your phones. So when you text message a girl or you say something to your friends, we don't delete messages because I want you to think when you send something that this, I don't care what Snapchat says. You're not on that either, but nothing disappears off the internet. So be proud of what you write and know that this, we're not deleting crap.
Right.
But your apps too. So you're not, if you want something, ask me about it. I have the password and then we'll say yes or no. And so he doesn't have Safari. He doesn't have his phone's got, he's able to talk to people. He's able to, do a lot with it. But it was actually more restrictive than the iPod, but he thinks it's cool because it's an iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
And, I said, the other rule that we have, and this drives me nuts, kids come over. We took 6 of his friends to this big thing at our church. I drive them 30 minutes, and they're all on their phones.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I just picked all you guys up, and you're all hanging out, or you come over for a sleepover. No, you guys can't. So our rule is, and I make Nolan now enforce this with his friends, when I let your friends come over, you guys are going to hang out. Now, I let you guys play Xbox. We play, whether it's FIFA or Madden. I feel like that's fun. It's competitive. It's not. That's different than hovering over someone's shoulder and watching them play, Game of War or some stupid game. And then the one kid that doesn't have an iPhone feels left out because now he's just watching you, or you're on a phone looking at YouTube videos and then you're looking at this and no, just be kids and go have fun or go outside. And so when their friends come over, you can't be on devices.
Yeah.
Or your friends aren't coming over. And because why did your friends come over? To look at their phones? And, so it's things like that where I've just said Nolan and I were on a train with his friend to this 21 Pilots show, and he's playing some game and his friend doesn't have a phone. And I got so pissed. And I was like, Nolan, we're on a train. Look outside. And your friend's here. So he lost. I was so pissed. I was like, you lose all 5 games now on your phone because the rule is when your friends are over, you don't go. No, you're not going to be that kid that we were somewhere else, me and Nolan, and we watched 2 different couples on a date standing in line. It was for another concert. And both men, I call them boys, were playing games on their phone while they're trying to talk to the girl standing in line. They're engaged in one of these dumb games. And I was like, Nolan, you're never going to be that boyfriend. Girls don't like that. And so I feel and Nolan would say this to my friends, that asked Nolan, what's cool about your parents, or what do you think's different about your parents? And Nolan says my dad's stricter on technology. And our last one is you can't now, and this is going to sound like I'm the oldest dude on the planet, but I have a reason for this one. Because Nolan just started liking girls, and which, yeah, it's cool. I'm glad. But girls, all they want to do is text. Mm-hmm. And you guys are old enough to remember how you had to call somebody, and if their mom or dad answered the phone, that was nervous.
Yeah, that was scary.
And then you're yeah, she's here or she's not here. Could you tell her Craig called? And just hanging up on the girl, because the dad or the brother answered. All that crap that we did.
I would hang up on the girl if she answered because I was so nervous.
Yeah, so nervous. Oh, yeah, just got disconnected.
Oh, shit, she answered. Oh, gosh.
I even got broken up on 3 times on the phone by a girl. But so Nolan likes this girl, and they start. So I look at his phone because it was just I'm curious, and dude, it's my phone. So, and I was like, what? So we had a little talk, and we had new rules. Hey, Nolan, first of all, emojis. I don't get it. I think it's stupid. At first, I kind of went off the handle. I was like, you can't emoji at all. He's like, Dad, that's just dumb.
He said he can't emoji.
So I said, here's the rule with emojis. You can't write a sentence. You can't use emojis unless there's words. Like, we're not speaking emoji talk because that's just dumb. Like, and then like I was looking at this thread with this girl of all these different, well, talk to you later. What's that one? Talk to you later, to you, like TTL and what miss, all this dumb stuff. And then I can't even understand it. And then it's emoji. And then I was like, screw this. You know what, Nolan? If you like her, call her. You're not allowed to build a relationship with a girl via text message.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, I mean, call her. So girls and boys today think let's talk is let's chat. What do I do, Dad, when she texts me? You say, hey, are you free? I'm going to call you. And guess what? Her dad's not going to answer her iPhone because it's her.
Yeah.
So this girl got all nervous. And then it took like 3 weeks. And then finally, like, she talked to Nolan on the phone. And it was like, yeah, you have real conversations with people and talk. And then you don't just interrupt her day, you know, good morning, like just text throughout no, call her, talk. And then you're going to be able to talk and communicate in real life instead of just on text. And yeah, you can text her and say, hey, are you free or this and that? But like the long old text messages where you just back and forth, like, no, I'm going to teach you how to talk to people. And one of the things that made me mad about this new iOS update, I feel like it caters to all these 12-year-olds, but it's 40-year-olds and 50-year-olds that are, you know, like all the text messaging updates and, you know, more ways to just, like I said, interrupt people's day. And like, no one's ever going to talk anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't want my kids like that. And
so Craig, after you guys finish watching Leave It to Beaver and playing with the Tinker Toys, so when he does have some time on the iPhone, here's what I want to ask about all this, because honestly, you know, you and I know each other relatively well, but I'm always the type of person, just to throw this out there. I mean, I respect everything you're saying, so I'm trying to figure this stuff out. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, this is like step one for Priscilla and I is talking to Craig Gross, the porn pastor, about internet stuff.
Yeah.
But
and if you want our kids to get married, you better, you know, at least be teaching a girl how to talk instead of text. She emojis Nolan. It's not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah, Priscilla's trying to set up an arranged marriage between our two.
I love Nolan. He's so awesome.
So don't you think that there is possibly back in the 1890s, a dad was telling his son the same thing? He said, "Son, you're not going to call that girl on the switchboard. You know, you are actually going to go knock on the door and go calling and, you know, pursue her that way." I'm curious. Like I'm learning a lot right now, but I don't know about. It seems like we are moving into a different season of technology, and there are different forms of communication. So part of me, I think that maybe there could be a little bit of balance as far as seeing texting as, oh, you know what, that's a form of communication that they need to learn.
But they need to balance it and not only text. Can I interrupt you for a second? Like, I was dying laughing when you were talking about you're riding on that train and he just kept being on his phone. His friend didn't have one. Like, I feel like I did the same exact thing one time with Rosa. Like, she just stayed on her. No, I don't think it was Rosa. I think it was Gwenny, because she's the one who loves her little device a lot more. But she ignored her friend and just stayed on her thing. And I feel like I did exactly what you did. I like took it away from her. She couldn't have it for a while. I freaked out because I was like, oh my gosh, my kid looks like a robot right now. Like, she's with one of her best friends. She always wants this play date. And then when she's here, she's like addicted to her stupid device, playing some game or whatever. So I was just laughing because I felt like I actually had that anger rise in me. Like how you described it is exactly how I felt. And then I'm also dying laughing because you do sound a little old manish with all the things that you're saying.
No, and I'm fine to be that old man, and like I think I'm.
No, I think you're an awesome old man.
But then I'm like, I got these rules because I do think, you know, going back to what Joey's saying, it's weird. Yeah, we're living in a day and age where like all the phone. Remember, like we used to pay for international calls. Now it's like all calls are you know, long distance calls.
Yeah.
Like now it's like every phone, it's free minutes, and they're charging you all on just data because no one's talking. Like I didn't even noticed Nolan wanted a phone so bad, but then like, dude, who do you actually call and talk to? Like, especially boys, like who are they? You're not
Yeah.
calling your friends,
Yeah,
you're not
see,
calling grandma, like, hey, want to talk? But it was just that idea of like, I do think it's a form of communication, but I don't think, I'm not anti-text. I'm saying I don't think giving, and trust me, I've seen it with even Elise and her friends that are much younger. Parents give kids an adult device. It's $700, $800 device, and they don't show them like what's appropriate and what's not. So we go to 10-year-olds now. Elise has never wanted a phone. She goes to dance 18 times a week, like your daughter, and it's okay, you take this extra phone if something happens at dance, whatever. Her friend and her now, they started texting, and and it's all dance stuff. It's like whatever, but the phone really for her just stays in her bag because Nolan reminds us every day. Well, I didn't get a phone to this. Why? Well, Nolan, she just takes it to dance
every day.
And so, anyways, they get on, and this other girl's kind of this, like, she's on Musically, she's on YouTube, she's on everything. She got her phone, and Elise doesn't have Instagram. She has an Instagram account, but she doesn't have it on her phone. They're direct messaging and texting, or this friend of hers, their current dance teacher and their former dance teacher that doesn't even live in the area, that runs at another studio now. Hey, guess what, 10-year-old? She's not your best friend. And like, don't be that annoying kid that just bothers an adult, dance teacher. And so we're like, Elise, like, there's boundaries. Like, you don't talk to your dance teacher. Like, you don't text her. You're well, she's 11 now, but you're 10. And like, it's like, she's an adult and you're still like, I think technology has given us access to everybody all the time.
Yeah.
And just, we're almost expected to return people's call, text right away. And we're interrupting everybody's life. And I think whether my rules are old fashioned or not, my kids are going to know like some boundaries and I think just some common sense when it comes to technology and how you use it. And hey, treat this like, not just a grown up, like, man, this isn't just a toy. And I think that's the stuff. I mean, we haven't even got to what you said earlier about your daughter and the likes, because I think the whole other thing online, and when you get on the social, that's the world we live in. It's just look at me, keep looking at me. I mean, I haven't looked at all your Instagram pages, but you don't strike me as that. Look at my cute outfit before the Packer game, and I'm going, selfie shot. Like, all those women that are like, look at me, I'm desperate for like just attention.
Yeah.
And I think girls, that scares me more than boys, that they want the followers, the likes. And we know what happens when they get boobs, they get a body, they get less clothes on, they get more likes. And it's just, I mean, when the Kardashian, Kim, posts 24 selfies and 19 selfies in 24 hours, I think was her record. And that's the world we live in, where that's like, she's great. And that's the standard. And I feel like that whole idea of, I hope my kids realize, if I had a couple good friends, we always say that to her, like, if you guys can have a few good friends, like, we do, you're better off than having 2,000 fake friends online. Like,
yeah. Craig, let me ask you this, like, I guess tell parents that are listening right now, what is at stake in protecting kids from porn? I know that seems like the dumbest, most basic question, but so in other words, what's the benefit of a kid seeing porn for the first time as an 18-year-old as opposed to 13-year-old?
I think no matter what anyone says about, the disclaimers or porn being, a movie, porn is the new sex ed. And so whether you're 18 or 13, whatever you see is what you're expecting to happen in sex to begin with. So I think an 18-year-old, or even a 25-year-old that looks at porn, they're still not smart enough to understand that that's not real. So a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old or a 10-year-old, when they see this, because once again, like, we're old, like Playboy and the porn that we saw as kids, like, or a centerfold. Oh, okay. Like, I'm not saying go look at that, but these kids are, the stuff that they're seeing. I mean, when there's a scene in Deadpool, which every one of Nolan's friends went to see it.
Yeah.
It's R-rated for a reason. There's that scene where he puts a strap-on and, no, Ryan Reynolds gets hit from behind with the strap. I mean, it's super inappropriate.
Yeah.
You see these things and, like, there's just so outrageous. And I mean, that's Deadpool. So porn is just way worse. And I think the idea is when they start experimenting with girls or with boys, it's the expectations of, like, well, this is what we'll do. Like, I mean, I couldn't hardly hold a girl's hand, let alone thinking about having anal. Like,
Right.
I feel like, when we talked about, oh, did you go up her shirt or this or that? Like, that was like ballsy, Now we had a situation with some of my son's friends. I found out about it because I was a soccer coach, and all these moms are like, oh, this is what you do. Like, how do we get on Instagram? And I was like, oh gosh, like, what do you mean? Well, ends up there's 6 kids direct messaging one girl on Instagram. And once again, on text, you can go so far on text that you could never go in real life because you can't use words like you can a keyboard. Mm-hmm. So these boys started talking to a girl, and it's the one girl that got boobs at 13, and so she's got attention because she's got, boobs, and these boys are talking to her. And then it's like, you're so hot, this and that. And then they start asking her for a picture. And then she sends a photo on direct message, and there's 6 boys on this thread. And then it jumps to what I want to do to you. And I was like, I could tell you from reading the direct message who's seen porn and who hasn't, because what they're describing about doing to her. And then one kid was like, well, what do you think? Like, won't your parents be home? And then one kid's like, my parents will join in. I mean, it was just like,
good gosh.
So then I'm at soccer practice, and I'm telling the one mom how to find the direct message. It's on her freaking phone that her kid was doing this on.
Yeah.
The other mom, it was on her iPad. And I was like, anyways, long story short, all these moms are over at my house. 2 of them are crying. What do we do? One mom's like, my kid's not even on Instagram. I'm like, you're so dumb. Like, he's on Instagram. Like, he's on a direct message asking to see this girl's boobs. Like, and they're all in denial. And then this was actually last year, right when Deadpool came out. And I was joking about that. And then one mom's like, I took him because he really wanted to see it, and I brought a blanket to put over his head. What? And I was like, what? During, like, the whole movie? And it was just like that idea of, like, what do you think's going to happen? Like, in the world where it's like there's sex stuff everywhere and their kids are going to see it. And then if parents aren't watching, isn't there,
I mean, is there any place for a parent to be like, not lackadaisical, but almost have a little bit of peace with the thought, I cannot protect them from porn forever. So, I don't know. I mean, it's just like they're gonna see it at some point. So you would go basically say, as a parent, we should prolong that as long as possible for them to have a proper outlook on sex for as long as possible? Or would you say that, hey, the longer we can keep them from that, the higher value our, education to them would be when we talk about sex? I mean, like I said, what's at stake here?
Well, I think, and I think either way you do it, whether you play my cards or, these other, you're going to have opportunities. One's going to be on the way reactive. Okay, now what do I do? And you're scrambling. And then you're like, on my side is like, this is still like we have so many conversations about
Mm-hmm.
this, and Nolan knows about, well, this is what happened with these friends, but he also knows, like, yeah, I'd be shocked, one, for you talking like that, or knowing, like, enough because of what's these conversations that we put in front of you, what's appropriate, what's not. Now, as much as you can prolong it, I think there's a point. My buddy Ryan, he's got a 16-year-old now, and he was saying, Craig, like, there's got to be a point where he's like, my kid's 2 years away from leaving the house.
Right.
And he's going to do whatever the hell he wants, like when he's out of my house. And at some point, you got to trust that, hey, I've done my job, and you let him loose. And not just when it comes to technology, but all this stuff. And so I think my idea is, over time, not just when you first give them the device. Or now, I feel like we're giving kids devices at 3-4 years old, like, to entertain them while we're busy at dinner. And that's, there's danger there. But I think, granted, Nolan's only 13 and we're walking this out right now. So I would just say my thoughts are going to be, slowly loosen up on what restrictions are on your phone, but those conversations aren't going to loosen. Man, at our house, we always have access. You can look at my phone whenever you want to see it. Like, no one has passwords on their phone. Like, that's just a rule. So that's not even a tech rule. I want to model that, because we hardly have friends that are married anymore because everyone's getting divorced. So I want to model that to my kids, that me and Jeanette don't have secrets. And just, you guys can pick up my phone, I can pick up your phone. And I think slowly, like, yeah, you're going to have more privileges. And it's already true. Like, when Nolan's friends come over and they have phones that, he's at school, he's at their house, and I don't know another parent like me that Nolan's friends with. So, you just kind of got to trust, like, yeah, they're going to make good decisions. Maybe sometimes they're not, but man, I think if we're willing to talk about it instead of, like, be all scared and just, because there's the ultra, you say I sound old and leave it to Beaver. That crowd, to me, is the ones that are like, we're going to lock everything down, we're going to restrict it, we're never going to talk about it. We're Christians. We love the Lord, and we honor God with our body. No, we're going to talk through this. And, one of Nolan's best friends couldn't come to his 13th birthday party in Mammoth because he was talking about tag teaming some girl, and, it was one of those things where it was like, man, that kid came over and cried and told Nolan, here's why I can't go to your party. And so that gives us all to me, there's enough stuff to give our kids, not some ammunition, but, there's enough other stuff happening with every other family that, like, we're going to be talking about that instead of like, oh no, Nolan, you can't hear about that. No, I'm going to tell you exactly what happened. And we're going to learn from that.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry. I was going to say that's what I've been thinking this whole conversation. I was teasing you, calling you an old man, but I was calling you an old man because you got really upset about emojis, and it was really funny. But I think that I've spent some time with you guys. You and Nolan are super close, and you can tell that you guys talk a lot, and you're pretty cool. Like, you're up on what's going on in the world. So you're not just restricting your kid. You know what's out there, and you guys talk about it, and then you're telling him what's appropriate. So I think like the part that I want to avoid, like, I'd like to be, this sounds kind of brown nosy or something. I'd like to be more like you with how you're doing that. What I've been wanting to avoid is not knowing it and then just restricting it also. Like, I do want to, I don't feel like I'm far enough ahead of what's going on. Like what you explained earlier about how Nolan can just figure things out super quick and then show you. Like that is obvious. That's definitely happening to all of us parents. And I don't know, I feel a little overwhelmed by it, I guess. And I think, this year, Joey and I have both been like, we need to sit down and like really talk about this and figure out like how we feel about Snapchat, because a whole bunch of our friends are doing Snapchat. Well, like 2 years ago when I heard about Snapchat, I pair Snapchat with teenagers sending naked pictures to each other. Yeah. So like I feel like Snapchat's bad, but like that's just what I put in my head. But then I'm seeing like what people are really using Snapchat for. I'm like, well, maybe it's not that bad. I just feel like I need to take time and look at all of it and understand it.
Yeah.
I mean, just like step one, what you said, don't just give them a phone. Like, look through all of it and set it up and then talk about what's appropriate and what isn't and why and all that stuff instead of having to take things away later. I mean, that's probably really common sense, but that's really good wisdom for a lot of people, including me. Like those moms crying and worried about Instagram. My son's on Instagram, and you're like, yes, they are. Like, I feel like that dummy sometimes. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I don't think we found ourselves in a place where we need to backpedal because our oldest isn't in a big hurry to grow up, which I'm really thankful for. So she's probably a little behind a lot of her friends anyway, as far as what they're doing. So I feel like we've lucked out a little bit on that. But our other daughter, on the other hand, I feel like we'll find herself in places and we'll be like, oh my gosh, how'd she get there?
Yeah.
Like we need to kind of get ahead of it.
How does that conversation play out, Craig? Like if your son or daughter says, hey, Dad, all the kids, they have this app. It's harmless. This is how it works. This is what it does. But Craig thinks that it's not a good idea. Possibly there's some danger and people like stalking your kids or high possibility of them seeing something they shouldn't. How does that conversation play out? Because obviously you don't say, because I said so. Like what's your explanation?
Oh, okay. So yeah, I got. Let me get there because real quick, iParent.tv is a website we created for parents because I think Priscilla, like most parents are like you guys.
All right, slow down. iParent.tv.
Yeah.
Okay.
So here's what we try to do: give you the cliff notes. So Snapchat. You can read all about it on the app reviews, but on iParent.tv, I'm going to give you a 2-minute video from a parent's perspective, and I'm just going to give you. If you choose to do it and let your kid do it, here's what you should be aware of. If you choose not to let your kid do it, here's why. Because I feel like my parents and that generation just said, because I said so, and they never told us why.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to help you make an informed decision. It's your call, but just be aware of it's not just a ghost and, a game. Mm-hmm. It's that idea. Like my rule on Snapchat, it goes against everything that I teach my kids, that what you say can just disappear. No, what you say matters and it doesn't disappear. And, so what we try to do with iParent is like, you don't have the time to go research all this stuff, but, your daughter wants Musical.ly. Like, okay, at the core of Musical.ly, I think it's a fun app. You at least wanted it. Here's what bothered me about it. Her friend printed out printouts of her Musical.ly and left them at the dance studio and at the different places to tell her she wanted to get 1,000 likes or whatever.
Oh, geez. Yeah, that makes it feel so yucky. Oh,
yeah, so then, like, okay, Musical.ly's fun and it's cute. Let's be honest. They're not like great videos. You singing. It's like, it's a moving selfie, which I'm like,
you bastard. You have not seen Roses.
Okay.
So your son can do all the acting and all that stuff, but my daughter sucks. Whatever, dude.
It's like you in your basement doing like a song, cute, whatever. But then it's like, look, I need followers. I need that. And I was like, at least like, this isn't like a high quality thing, and it's just more look at me. And they were at our birthday party, and it was like I got embarrassed that it was like complete strangers follow me and like this, and it's just like, no, this is dumb, and like I'm not gonna. Why do you need a follower? And I think that's and I don't want to say a problem with it. I think it's like a cute app. It's pretty much harmless, other than the fact of like, kids now growing up, like, I need to make this video and I need to share this. And like, there's that sense of like, everything's got to be shared and put out there, and nothing is like, it's all on display. And I feel like for kids, they're going to get that. Obviously they're growing in a whole different world than we are, but do I want to start that at 10? And, I think it's just kind of that balance. So for me, and what we've tried to do on I think there's 137 apps that we reviewed on iParent over the last couple of years. And
so
on all of them, we've tried to tell you from a parent's perspective, like, because that's really all that matters. Like, if you're a parent and we're just going to try and give you the clip notes on what it is, so you don't have to, hear from your kid that it's one thing that it's not. Like, we're not dumb. We're going to tell you, and then you're going to make the decision. And if you do it, just be aware of what you're giving your kid access to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think being in the dark and not knowing what your kid does, like, that's just an awful place to be in. And if you're that behind when your kids are 8, 9, you're never going to catch up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I remember elementary school, 4th grade is when I started to hear some crazy stuff, and that it blows my mind because my daughter now is in the 5th grade. So I seriously wonder what has she heard? What kind of questions she has? Craig, you'll get a kick out of this. I was hanging out with some friends, and one of them grabbed like this little stick, and they were kind of moving it along on the ground. I was like, what's he doing? And so he lifts up like a used condom, and all the dudes are like, yeah. And he, he's just kind of showing. And so my brother, he says, we walk away, and Jared's like, hey, do you know what that was? I'm like a 4th grader. And I looked at him and like I shrugged my shoulders and kind of put my hands up. I said, pussy? Like, I had heard so many different words, and I just didn't know. I mean, I had another friend. I'll never forget these things because I was trying to piece it all together. Love my parents to death. They did not do a good job in this area. But my friend, we were staying up late, and he said, hey, do you know what it means to, eat a girl? And he took his pillow and started pretending to lick it like it was her boobs. I mean, so he doesn't even know what he's talking about. And so it's just crazy. Like, Rosa has had to have heard some stuff that she is wondering, what in the world does that mean? And, so it's just like that acknowledgement of when she's at school, I cannot protect her. But like you said, keeping that conversation going. And I think what's so crazy, and I thought about this as we were, as I was preparing to talk to you, it is insane that our parents and our grandparents, they had the talk. I mean, for those that taught their kids about sex, it was one night, one 30-minute conversation. Here's what you need to know. And then they could sigh of relief and be like, oh, sweet, I did it. And that is just so crazy. Like, conversation starts, then it ends, and you don't ever talk about it again. And it makes it some crazy, mysterious, taboo, yucky thing that, I guess parents don't even want to talk about this. And that's what we have to move away from. And that's what I really want to figure out with our kids, is how to just continue the conversation. And, that at least gives us a better chance, I think, to keep them out of trouble.
Oh, yeah. And I say this all the time. Your kids will talk to you about things you talk to them about. Your kids won't talk to you about things you don't talk to them about. So when we were on the trip in Jacksonville, Nolan asked me, hey, Dad, did you put a condom over your balls? And I was like, no, but it's just, it's just like,
that'd be so cool if that worked.
Yeah, I know,
that would be awesome.
I was like, you could, but it was just one of those, like, we talk and like you'll hear stuff and then you'll be able to we're able to talk. We're able to, kick around those things. And I think that's that idea. It's like, man, if your kids feel comfortable going to you and instead of avoiding you, like, I don't know, man, my dad died a couple years ago. My mom now lives, in the same town. We're going to her house that she grew up at and like taking her on when she first moved to California. Long story short. So my mom and I are talking, kids are in the back. I come to find out my non-Christian parents at the time dated each other, and then they saved themselves from, my mom's never had sex with anyone but my dad. Mm-hmm. And I was like, Mom, why am I 40 and Dad's dead and I just found this out? Yeah. And she's like, Craig, please, your kids are in their car. I'm like, it's fine. I've talked to them about sex. I was like, guys, this is interesting. Grandma was a virgin. Like, why did you guys wait? Like, why did you guys not have sex? Like, well, I mean, Dad was like 30 when he got married, and you're like, I want to know. And she's so uncomfortable and she didn't want to talk about it. And I think when Dad tried to have the sex talk with me, like that would have been a good time to bring it up. Like, hey, your mom and I, I so many opportunities. So we've always sworn to our kids, like, we don't want to, man, we don't want to be those parents that are like, just tell you what to do and don't tell you the why. And your kids might be too young to try this one, but I think this is a fun thing. We just started 3 weeks ago, so I can't tell you it's been life changing, but in 3 years from now, if we still do it, then it might be the most brilliant thing I've said. But one, I want my kids to learn how to talk to adults. I want them to know how to talk to their friends and eventually their spouses. And then I want my kids to be able to ask good questions and communicate. So we do this, and whenever I have ideas, I think my kids still think I have dumb ideas. Like, oh, what's Dad doing now? So I'm like, circle time. No one's like, one circle time. Elisa's like, I'm tired. I'm like, no, we're sitting around in a circle. When do we do this? Whenever Dad says we're doing it. All right, what do we do? And I said, you pick somebody in the room, and there's only 4 of us, and you ask whatever question you want. And you have to answer it honestly. And I don't want what do you want to be when you grow up? Or Dad, what's your favorite color? I want good questions. And whatever you want. And I was like, gosh, if I could ask my parents whatever I wanted and they would actually talk, or, I think for me, once again, start this younger. And then as the kids get older and doing things that they don't want you to know about, yeah, I'll wait till circle time and ask a question. But so anyways, and I said, don't be afraid if these aren't good questions the first time. I think, I want you to think about that. So we asked, I think Nolan asked on the second one we did, my wife, which would be Jeanette, his mom, what was it like growing up without a dad? And I thought, no, that's a good question. We've never really, that's good. He then asked Elise, Elise, last year there's a boy. He wanted to find out if she had this crush on this kid, and she got a couple pissed. No, Nolan, that's so gross. No, Nolan, I don't like boys. But I was like, oh, this is fun when you guys are dating eventually. But it's just one of those things of I might invite my mom over and let her be a part of circle time. But hey, you guys can ask us.
Uncomfortable.
Yeah, you guys can ask us whatever. We can ask you whatever because we're your parents, and hopefully, man, I hope at some point, our desire, whether our kids live with us, eventually, like I said, they're going to move out, get married, but man, they feel like they can talk. They feel like we were open, and yeah, we were their parents, and we had rules, but man, they're for a reason, and I think, our screw ups. I mean, Jeanette had sex, she wasn't a Christian. I waited till I got married. We have different, gosh, Jeanette wasn't proud of those things, but her parents never talked to her about this stuff. So if our kids can know our stories and know these things rather than try and pretend that we were perfect or we did, just, and I want to be open, and I don't want to be that parent that just gives, no one knows exactly why, and obviously what I do for a living, but gosh, why I care about what they see and what they don't see, and why we have some of these rules. It's not just because we're a hard ass. It's man, we ultimately care about protecting you from some of this stuff, and we know eventually, we're up against a battle when I feel like nobody else really pays attention to it until there's a problem.
Yeah.
And then you're reacting, and it's a whole lot, harder when you're playing, when you're acting rather than being proactive.
Yeah. I'm just sitting here thinking, because I've seen you with your kiddos, seen you more than once with Nolan, and obviously super comfortable to talk to you. You've done a good job with them being able to talk to adults. It's partly why Nolan's so fun to hang out with. He's fun to talk to and everything. He's awesome with adults. I think about my kids and just our 2 girls. All 4 of them have such different personalities from each other, especially our girls. And our oldest, it really is hard to get information out of her, to figure out what she's thinking. She just keeps things bottled up. And I'm like an open book. I'll tell you anything about my life, probably to a fault sometimes. I don't know. And the other one, our Gwenny, our younger one, she can't hold one secret inside. And I sometimes feel like we've talked about more sex stuff than I actually, in fact, I know for sure we have more than my older daughter. She just has a way more curiosity, way more like freaking out as to why she even likes the boys. She feels too young to even like boys. Like, why is this happening to me? And she'll start crying and like talk about all this stuff. And she is like so easy to talk to. And the other one, like Rose, I really need to figure out something. I mean, sometimes I need a book to read with her or something to create conversation. Otherwise, I don't know. It's just different for each kid. So I think it's a challenge for me, but definitely worth it. That's why I love that we have this conversation. I feel like we could talk. I feel like I have like 1 million questions to ask, but then make this podcast, I guess, way too long. But just like I would love like a dummy sheet on how to get started with all this stuff. I mean, everything you said is super helpful for me for sure. And then just taking into consideration each kid. And then I even think about some of the stuff that you were saying, like, I remember when Facebook first came out, and I did not want Facebook because I thought it was really dumb. I remember Twitter. I thought Twitter was
I was like that with cell phones.
I thought Twitter was super dumb. I was like, I'm never doing Twitter. And I just thought all that stuff was really dumb. And I'm like, am I going to be the parent that calls everything stupid? Or am I going to try to figure it out and engage with it somehow? Like, I feel like it's actually a tricky balance to have. I don't know. Like, I feel like I really struggle with social media. Like, sometimes I think it's funny, it's fun, it's, whatever. Like, it's fun to see what's going on in people's lives. And other times I'm like, I just don't even want this in my life right now. And I look at my kids and I'm like, it's just so crazy to think about their life and what it's like for their generation coming up. I mean, all my friends got to watch MTV and they knew all the MTV videos and all that kind of stuff. I was the kid that was not allowed to talk on the phone. We didn't have cable. I didn't know what videos they were talking about. And then my parents were divorced. So when I was at my dad's, I saw everything. So I was exposed to everything every other weekend. But like I guess like my regular day-to-day life, I felt somewhat not with it. Do you know what I mean? That's why I feel like I don't want to shelter my kids, but I don't want to be lazy about it.
Yeah, and I think that's what Priscilla and I have done is we've run the opposite direction, not wanting to shelter them and not wanting to mess them up. And Craig, my background a little bit. I mean, I grew up in very legalistic churches that really messed me up, and I don't want to do that to my kids. But some of the stuff that you shared here, in the last hour, it's opening my eyes to, okay, I've got to push against my, desire not to shelter, but also protect them. And like Priscilla said, I mean, there's a balance, and got to figure that thing out. All right, so give us some websites. What was the first one? Parents what?
Yeah, iParent.tv.
iParent.tv.
And if you put your email down, there's a talk I did. It's kind of like the main talk I do for parents on like how do you just the sex talk. So yeah, I always say like don't just have one talk, but if you need a place to start, like here's kind of some pointers on this first one, and then then there's a ton of stuff on that site for apps and like just helping you make an informed decision as a parent. Second site, man, we have nothing to do with other than like personally, I use it. I'm a fan. It's not our company. Meetcircle.com, MEET Circle. They just got to deal with Disney. You guys, like, I'll get you one. And so once again, some people are going to hear this and go, oh, well, it doesn't do everything. Yeah, but it's a good start. And I'm telling you, like, it's $99. I'll send one to your house. You plug and play. Like, it's easy. So they designed it, and I don't want to say, I know Hillary Clinton can set up her own email server. They really targeted moms because they thought moms are going to be the ones that care about this more than dads. And moms need to know, though, how to do it. So routers and my wife's like, she screams at when I say get on Basecamp or Dropbox. She thinks I'm talking another language. So
I'm the same way.
and I'm also that guy, like, whenever I go to my friend's house and their Wi-Fi network is like WFC1255 and it's under the kitchen counter, I just drives me nuts. So I've set up so many Wi-Fi accounts where the Wi-Fi network's now just called Go Packers, and the password is Craig is awesome. I'm like, you guys can just do this, but a lot of people don't know how to do it. So what Circle did was like, it's a device. It's super small. It plugs in to the wall and it connects to your existing Wi-Fi. That's all you have to do. And then you download. Boy, I just said that's all you have to do, and then I said the next step. But that's all you have to do on the setup. You don't have to find your router wherever the heck that is under some counter and plug it in. You just plug it in the wall. It connects to your Wi-Fi, and then one of your parents, like one of you, technically the mom is who they designed it for, downloads the app. I'm telling you, it's pretty stinking awesome compared to anything I've seen out there. What happens now is you have the app. And you take a picture of each kid and Joey and yourself. And now you have all your settings. And everyone has a little picture. And then it finds every device that's connected to that Wi-Fi. And it says Joey's iPhone, your daughter's iPod, the Kindle. And you assign each device to the user that uses it. And then it's got pre-set up settings, child, teen, adult, or none. And so you can go customize crap if you want, but it's like, Elise, you're a child. Nolan, you're a teen. Jeanette, you're an adult. And so the coolest thing about it is like, that's all you have to do. And
that's
then
really cool.
What happens is on teen settings, there's their restrictions. Like it can set time limits and it can turn off on a certain time. You can get into crazy things, but the coolest thing is, so I'm in Jacksonville this weekend. Somebody's over at her house. I get an alert on my phone because Jeanette, even though it's supposed to be for women, I'm like, I'm setting this thing up. But so I get an alert and it says somebody has joined your Wi-Fi. And then I realize who it is and I can assign them by default. By default, anyone that joins our Wi-Fi is a teenager because it's mainly like Nolan and his friends that come over. And it's like, oh, get on our Wi-Fi. I'm able to see anything that they see, but more than that, they can't stumble across anything questionable at my house. Now, get it. You can go to your friend's house and see all the shit you want, but at my house, like I know, kind of like the library, the internet's protected. At my house, these different devices, and the cool thing is like we have the Nest thermostat and we got some other stuff that you don't want managed because it's like that's just annoying. Like, so you just there's a whole other category like unmanaged devices that you don't even want filtered. But this thing's awesome and it's $99 one time. They just released Disney partnered with them because Disney cares about family is what they want you to think, but ultimately let's be honest, Disney wants all the blocked pages to serve up Disney content. I think that's the most annoying thing about it, but that's why Disney kind of praises, oh, it's awesome, but it's cool that they're behind it. It's at Best Buy, it's at Target. They're doing really well. But cool. The cool thing now is on devices, it gets a little more expensive. I think it's like $9 a month. You can take that on the go. So then when you leave the house, if you're going to give your kid a phone, in addition to what you can do on the phone now, this can go with them in those same settings. So simple thing like that, to me, man, at least I think we have a responsibility to protect your kids in your own home. Yeah. And I think by far the best device, but you guys can talk about it on another podcast. I want to send it to you. I want you to, Priscilla, sign up, set it up, and tell me how easy it is. Because it's awesome.
Thank you so much. I'm excited
awesome.
about that.
Well, Craig Gross, folks, thanks for being on here. Hey, and by the way, Craig has texted me like 5 times while we've been doing this interview. He said that he put a picture on Facebook of him flexing his biceps, and he just wants 5,000 likes. So if you could just go over there and give him some likes, we sure would appreciate it.